attempt to undermine our democracy, to undo the Parliament, supported by some Conservative members. Countering this misinformation allows more information to circulate, and this, too, is the purpose of Bill C-11 that has now been improved. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
And the honourable member will have 5 minutes for questions and comments when we retake this discussion after question period. Is it awesome? Okay. Statements by members, déclaration de députés. The honourable member for Newmarket, Aurora.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Over the past year, our community of Newmarket, Aurora has lost 2 gentlemen whose impact on health care is immeasurable. Art Craig passed on October 17, 2021, and Al Roeder passed away on May 29, 2022. Both served our community from leadership positions with what is now the South Lake Regional Health Care Centre. Both served as presidents. Al was the consummate professional, a health leader, and in many ways a health pioneer. He was also above all else, a gentleman loved and respected by family, neighbors, and former colleagues. Art was a great supporter of arts and culture who believed in serving the community. He's remembered as a kind soul with a love of family and friends. The respect that he had from those who benefited from his support is exemplified with lifetime memberships in various organizations. Our community, and specifically our hospital and healthcare, owe much to the leadership and the vision of both of these gentlemen. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Essex.
Speaker, look no further than to Essex to rise to the occasion when the cry for help for the families of Ukraine need it so desperately. We all need a good news story these days, and wow, do I have a great one for you. Gary Taverne and his amazing family were horrified by the horrible images of the illegal war on Ukraine, and they knew they had something to do. But they have gone above and beyond. They've created the Kyiv Home Project, and they are building a 2-family home for Ukrainian families to settle in Cotham's Woodridge Estates, as well as supporting these families for 3 years as they get their footing back. With the help of BK Cornerstone, the town of Kingsville, corporate donors, contractors, skilled trade workers, and Pastor Kim Gillian and the congregation provides these for reality. Speaker, I am proud to strongly.
Unfortunately, the honourable member's video was cutting out. I'll allow him to restart, and if it cuts out again, I'm just not sure what we can do about that. Okay, the honourable member for Essex.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I really appreciate that. Speaker, look no further than to Essex to rise to the occasion when the cry for help for the families of Ukraine need it so desperately. We all need a good news story these days, and wow, do I have a great one. Gary Taverne and his amazing family were horrified by the horrible images of the illegal war on Ukraine, and they knew they had to do something. But they have gone above and beyond. They have created the Kyiv Home Project, and they are building a 2-family home for Ukrainian families to settle in Cotham's Woodridge Estates, as well as supporting these families for 3 years as they get their footing back. With the help of BK Cornerstone, the town of Kingsville, corporate donors, contractors, skilled trade workers, and Pastor Kim Gillian and the congregation of the Cottam United Church, their goal is to provide safe housing and necessities, which Ukrainian families will soon become reality. Speaker, I am proud to strongly support this incredible act of compassion. I ask all of my colleagues in the House to join me in thanking the Taverne family for their generosity and for leaving the world a better place than they found it.
The honourable member Sackville Preston Chesapeake.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Canadian families across the country are stepping up to help Ukrainians come to and stay in Canada. The Parkers, a family from Eastern Passage in my riding of Sackville Preston Chesapeake, are now hosting their second family from Ukraine. Anasty, Lysia, Aliski, and Polina arrived in Canada 2 weeks ago. Last Friday, I visited the Parker home to give young Polina a Canadian flag and a backpack full of goodies. It was heartwarming to see her playing on the trampoline and waving her handheld Canadian flag. I want to thank the Parkers and all other families across Canada that have shown incredible generosity in opening up their homes and their hearts to the people of Ukraine. Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
The honourable member for Timmins James Bay.
Food prices are going through the roof, and working-class families are finding it harder and harder to make ends meet. Now, we know that Vladimir Putin's illegal war in Ukraine is driving fears of a global food shortage, but those fears are the perfect cover for the giant food conglomerates who are jacking up prices not because of inflation, but to gouge us. Cargill's profits were up 64% in a single year. Loblaws' first quarter profits are 40% higher than last year. So what is this government doing? Well, the Liberals, remember, they used taxpayers' money to fix Galen Weston's fridges while Loblaws was scamming us over the price of bread. And the Conservatives, well, their would-be leader says, invest your savings in crypto Ponzi schemes to beat inflation. I mean, a financial genius, this guy is not. What we're dealing with is not inflation, but old-fashioned price gouging, corporate giants ripping off Canada's working class. New Democrats say it's time we took on these corporate giants and got this money back in the pockets of working-class families.
The honourable member for Milton.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We need to talk about men's health. This is Men's Health Week, and June is Men's Health Month. But we need to recognize how important it is for men to be aware of their physical and their mental health every day of the year. Canadian men die at alarmingly high rates of chronic illnesses in Canada, and yet 70% of men's health problems are preventable just by living a healthier life. Healthy eating and daily physical activity play an important role in the health, well-being, and quality of life of all Canadians. But physical activity in particular decreases stress and helps prevent chronic diseases like diabetes, cardiovascular disease, cancers, and many other things that we should all work to avoid. La bonne nouvelle pour les gars, il y a des raisons.
The good news is that there's resources in every community to support us. Visit fondationsantédeshommes.ca, which is a great place to start to focus on mental and physical health for men.
My dad, Joe, and all the other dads out there in Milton and across Canada, a very happy Father's Day.
L'honorable député de Beauce.
Madame la Présidente, on est...
Madam Speaker, summer is just a few days away. As you walk around my riding, you'll see patio umbrellas in people's backyards, and you'll notice the smell of barbecues. I would like to wish all the people of Beauce a happy summer vacation. The last 2 years have been tough, but this summer will finally feel more like normal. Continue to support your local grocery store, eatery, or corner store this summer. That neighbor, friend, or family member needs you more than ever. Don't forget that in the French word for beauty, beau, we have the word Beauce. I know I'm biased, but our landscapes, our warm welcome, and our sweet treats are unsurpassed. I invite all of my colleagues to come by this summer to enjoy our scenic Route de la Beauce and learn its stories. Then you won't want to leave, but that's okay. I've got room for guests. Happy summer holidays. My home is your home.
The honourable member for Brampton Centre.
Madam Speaker, on behalf of the residents of Brampton Centre, I rise today to recognize Tahir Khan, Shafiq Ahmed, Akil Akram, Raja Ashfaq, Farooq Ahmed, and Zia Inam for their selfless service to the community as the founding members of the Funeral Aid Society of Peel. The Society is a not-for-profit organization whose more than 1,100 members self-insure against funeral and burial expenses. When a loved one passes away, funeral and burial expenses can add to the stress of bereavement. Upon the demise of one of its members, the Funeral Aid Society steps in to pay all the funeral and burial expenses and then distribute that cost pro rata among its members. Many thanks and much appreciation to the Funeral Aid Society of Peel and its founders, volunteers, and members for helping the community in one of the most difficult times in life. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Aurora Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Aurora Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill is situated on the traditional territories of the Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Anishinaabe peoples and is covered by Treaty 13 and the Williams Treaties. We are privileged and grateful to share this part of Turtle Island. The actions of many, including our government, have been revealed under the bright light of truth. We cannot deny the residential school graves or that the number of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls has become an epidemic. It should enrage us all that more than 63% of Indigenous women have experienced physical or sexual violence. We cannot remain complacent. That is why the National Action Plan has been put into place and a special interlocutor on residential schools has been appointed. Change finds its roots in many places. High school students in York Region, where my riding is located, will be studying Indigenous literature. In 2021, Richmond Hill closed their facilities for the Day of Truth and Reconciliation, and Aurora held a gathering led by Jared Big Canoe of Georgina Island to mourn and affirm that every child matters. June is Indigenous History Month, and June 21st is Indigenous Peoples Day. But these are just dates unless we commit ourselves to ensure the future is different than the past, unless we all choose to change. I am committed and believe change is possible. Together, we must all walk the path of reconciliation. Thank you.
The honourable member for Desnetham is Nittany Churchill River.
Madam Speaker, this week the residents of Stanley Mission returned home after the whole community was evacuated due to a forest fire. In this overwhelming situation, there are many people deserving thanks and our recognition. The fire crews from Stanley Mission and surrounding communities who were on the front lines. The Laurent Fire Department for providing equipment and personnel. The Council of Stanley Mission, the PAGC, and the SPSA for their organization and assistance in managing both the fire and the evacuation. The Red Cross, who went above and beyond in preparation and implementation of the evacuations to the cities of Prince Albert, Saskatoon, and Regina. And finally, the EMO coordinator Morris Ratt and Chief Tammy Cook-Searson of the Lac La Ronge Indian Band for their steadfast leadership and hard work at guiding their communities through a very difficult and stressful emergency. Madam Speaker, to all of these and to the many volunteers who played a role in keeping the community and the people of Stanley Mission safe, I say a very big thank you.
Hear, hear.
The honourable member for Kingston and the Islands.
Madam Speaker, after 46 years of being the voice of sports in Kingston, local legend Doug Jeffries is hanging up his microphone. A native of nearby Gananoque, Doug's career started in 1976 when, shortly after graduating from Loyalist College in Belleville, he was hired by local radio station CKLC to cover the sailing events that were being held in Kingston as part of the 1976 Montreal Olympics. For the next 25 years, Doug was a staple on CKLC and its sister station, Fly FM, hosting both morning shows and sportscasts, as well as being the voice of the Queen's Golden Gales football and OHL Kingston Canadians. Doug then moved on to TV, working for CKWS, initially as a news anchor, before returning to sports in 2002 as the station's sports anchor. Doug also cares deeply for local sports in Kingston, and in particular, showcasing the skills and highlights of local high school athletes on the evening news. This past Wednesday, June 15th, was Doug's final broadcast and has been declared Doug Jeffries Day in Kingston. I would like to thank Doug for sharing his talent, his voice with us over the last 46 years and wish him a happy retirement.
The honourable member for Souris Moose Mountain.
Madam Speaker, last week marked the start of the 2022 CFL season, and football fans across the country are excited and ready to cheer on their team. As a die-hard CFL fan, I'm always happy to get a chance to highlight this great Canadian sport that I believe is the best version of game of football. With wide open play, exciting offense, and energetic defense, you need to stay to the very end to see who wins. The CFL has 9 teams split amongst the East and West divisions, and hopefully a team in the Maritimes soon. The season will culminate in this Grey Cup Championship game happening on November 16th in Regina. This will be the 109th Grey Cup game, and after 2 years of the pandemic, the province of Saskatchewan and the city of Regina are excited to welcome tourists back with open arms. This is a great opportunity to take in some world-class football played by outstanding athletes, and I encourage everyone to attend the game, to watch the games on TV. While I know which team I'll be cheering for, I wish all players, coaches, and staff a successful season. Go Riders, go!
The honourable member for Peterborough, Kawartha.
Here.
Leanne Quinn has received the Order of Military Merit Award, the highest order a member of the military can receive. She's the honorary Lieutenant Colonel to the Hastings and Prince Edward Regiment. She's an all-star athlete. She's a Guinness World Record holder. She's an RN. She's a nurse practitioner who volunteers her time at Camp Maple Leaf. She received the Florence Nightingale Award in 2007 as Canada's top nurse. She's served and practiced medicine around the world in war-torn countries. She's also a survivor of PTSD. Leanne is passionate about mental health, solutions, and service. She retired this past Tuesday so she can devote all her time to the Brock Clinic, which she worked tirelessly to make happen. The clinic offers free care for the homeless. Leanne, you have done so much for this community, and I promise, as I said I would, I will continue my work on this federal level to work across all party lines to ensure that mental health care becomes a priority from coast to coast to coast in this country. Leanne, I am so honored to know you.
The honourable member for Ottawa West Nepean.
Madame la Présidente, je voudrais attirer l'attention de...
I rise today to draw the attention of the House to the dire situation in the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo. In recent weeks, we've witnessed an upswing in violence by M23 and other militias, resulting in extreme human rights abuses. Tens of thousands of people have been displaced from their homes. UN peacekeepers have been targeted, and there have been allegations of rocket fire across the border. The head of MONUSCO said in a statement, "We reaffirm our firm commitment to the sovereignty, independence, unity, and territorial integrity of the DRC and condemn the use of armed groups acting by proxy. I urge..."
There's a lot of noise going on, especially on the members' side, and I would just ask members to please be respectful and allow members to deliver their statements without being interrupted. Je vais demander à l'honorable...
I will ask the honourable member to restart.
Président, je voudrais attirer l'attention...
Madam Speaker, I rise today to draw the attention of the House to the dire situation in the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo. In recent weeks, we've witnessed an upswing in violence by M23 and other terrorist militias, resulting in extreme human rights abuses. Tens of thousands of people have been displaced from their homes. UN peacekeepers have been targeted, and there have been allegations of rocket fire across the border. The head of MONUSCO said in a statement, "We reaffirm our commitment to the sovereignty, independence, unity, and territorial integrity of the DRC and condemn the use of armed groups acting by proxy. I urge the government of Rwanda to work with the DRC and de-escalate the situation and work towards an immediate ceasefire of all armed groups." Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Winnipeg Centre.
Mr. Speaker, today I'm honored to acknowledge a special anniversary of an extraordinary organization in Winnipeg Centre. The Immigrant and Refugee Community Organization of Manitoba, known as HoC, is celebrating 30 years this month. This organization uses a one-of-a-kind model which provides safe, affordable transitional housing along with wraparound supports to 111 newcomer families in Winnipeg Centre. I want to acknowledge the leadership of the refugee communities and advocates in building HoC, Ellen, 30 years ago, and in opening HoC, Isabel, in 2016. Thank you for creating this safe space for community to thrive. HoC introduces their values like this. At HoC, we love our community. We are full of hope and optimism. I am proud to share this with you and celebrate with every member of HoC community, families, staff, volunteers, and a special tribute to HoC's youth. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
L'honorable député de Joliette.
Madame la Présidente, samedi...
Madam Speaker, Saturday on Radio Canada's airwaves will be the last time we'll have the chance to hear the smooth voice of Joël Lebigot at the helm of the show Samedi et rien d'autre. He announced his retirement with the end of the season. Joël Lebigot and his team first delighted listeners every weekday morning at CBF Bonjour for almost 20 years. Then, after a year adrift, this sea dog returned to ride the radio waves and become the king of Quebec's weekends. Throughout his phenomenal radio career, Joël has been much more than a voice. With Brassens playing in the background, he's revealed his fine mind, curiosity about everything, a wry sense of humor, and real humanitarianism. His big heart was a driving force behind the return of the Guignolé des Médias, an annual charity drive. We know he'll have a busy retirement, throwing himself into his role as grandpapa and spending time with friends. It's the end of an era. It was a beautiful one. Wishing you fair winds and following seas.
The honourable member for Regina Louvain.
Madam Speaker, I asked Yulia, a 24-year-old intern from Ukraine, to describe Putin's brutal war in her own words. Here is exactly what she wrote. Imagine this Wednesday night. You set your alarm for 6 a.m., but it never goes off. Instead, your world is shattered by the deafening sounds of explosions. You're not sure what's going on. Your phone incessantly beeps with notifications. The war has started. Death steals your mind. Adrenaline fills you. You grab your passport, stuff your life into a backpack, and try to escape. It takes 6 hours. You have no destination. Everything has been bombed. Friends text, Russians are entering the town, shooting civilians, looting apartments, stealing your life's belongings, and sending them back to Russia. Air sirens wail constantly as you read heartbreaking stories. A 6-year-old boy, hair is turning gray as he watches his mom being raped. A mom and daughter tied to a mine that exploded. A missile launched at a maternity hospital. Plain and simple, the Liberals need to stop sending officials to drink champagne and eat caviar with Russian officials and do more to help Ukrainians.
The honourable member for Halifax.
Madam Speaker, this week the Youth Council of Canada's Chief Science Advisor, Dr. Mona Niemer, is in Ottawa. I had the great privilege of speaking with the Council yesterday as part of their meetings in the capital. I was deeply impressed by the diversity of their fields and backgrounds, from oceans to aerospace and everything in between. I was also moved by their brilliance, their probing and smart questions, their passionate advocacy for their research, and their curiosity about the intersection of science and politics. Dr. Niemer has tasked the Youth Council with writing a report on the future of science in Canada, and their meetings this week with government representatives and members of Ottawa's science policy community will inform their work. But one thing is clear to me, Madam Speaker, with these young people at the forefront of research and discovery in Canada, the future of science in our country knows no bounds. So, Madam Speaker, I would like to invite all members to join me in congratulating the Chief Science Advisors Youth Council on their successful trip to Ottawa and thank them for their excellent contributions, those today and those to come, to science in Canada.
Oral questions, questions orales. The honourable member for Red Deer-Lacombe.
Madam Speaker, Canadians continue to have to pay Service Canada for expedited passports, despite the minister assuring this House that this wouldn't be the case. Half the time, they're not even getting the enhanced service they're being forced to pay for. This directive first came out weeks ago, and yet it's still not being implemented. If the minister's department doesn't respect her enough to follow her directives, how does she ever expect to clear the backlog?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I'd like to thank the honourable member for his question. As he and as many Canadians know, after 2 years of travel restrictions in this pandemic, there is an unprecedented backlog of applications both in Canada and around the world. And this has led to delays in processing and issuance. But the minister has been adamant with the department to address the situation and improve service, and we continue to do so on a day-to-day basis because the situation is not acceptable. Canadians need their documents. We will keep Canadians informed about additional measures as we take them and encourage people to plan ahead to ensure that they have passports planned before booking. But I'd like to also emphasize that those who...
For Red Deer-Lacombe.
Madam Speaker, Passport Canada's narrow definition of need for expediting a passport is very troublesome. If a person has an upcoming ticket to Disney World, they can get an expedited passport. If someone is pleading to expedite their passport so they can fly to say goodbye to their dying parent, or go to Europe to help their scared elderly mother escape from Ukraine, well, that isn't really an urgent need according to Passport Canada. So if the minister can't be competent, can she at least try to be compassionate?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Families, Children and Social Development.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you for the member for his additional question. I'd like to be clear that those clients and those Canadians who are in need for humanitarian reasons or other compassionate purposes for critical illness or other emergencies to travel, whether it's the death of another person, they can obtain a passport within 2 business days with proof of travel or need. And this standard is being pressed upon and upheld from coast to coast to coast at every Passport Canada counter across this country. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
L'honorable député de Louis Saint-Laurent.
The honourable member for Louis Saint-Laurent. Madam Speaker, yesterday, the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance chose Toronto to make an announcement to give Canadians hope about inflation. But unfortunately, once again, the Minister of Finance showed that she's completely disconnected from Canadians' reality. She didn't make any new announcement, just re-announcements. So I have a question. Why does this Liberal government refuse to help Canadian families by lowering taxes? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Tourism. Well, there's a simple answer. We have lowered taxes on the middle class, whereas the Conservatives voted against that. It's unacceptable that today the Conservatives are asking us to do what they refused to do a few years ago. Yesterday, the Deputy Prime Minister announced our plan to support Canadians during this period of inflation and cost of living increase. It's a serious plan, whereas the Conservatives have nothing to propose. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint-Laurent. Well, Madam Speaker, everyone knows that this year this government increased the carbon tax. Today, we heard in the Journal de Montréal a scathing but true comment, which is that all of this Liberal government's measures will not fight inflation. In fact, they'll make it worse. In what unicorn country does this Deputy Prime Minister live? That's the problem. She's out of touch. She lives in fantasy land. But Canadians have to live in the Liberal Canada where taxes are increasing. Why does this government not want to reduce taxes for all Canadians? The Honourable Minister of the Environment. Thank you, Madam Speaker. My colleague spoke about carbon pricing, and I'd like to remind him that federal carbon pricing does not apply to Quebec, since Quebec has its own cap-and-trade system, first of all. And secondly, in the provinces where the carbon pricing system applies, people get more back from that system than what is taken away from them. In Ontario, families will get $745 this year, $830 in Manitoba, in Saskatchewan, $1,100, and in Alberta, $1,080. So Canadians are better off with this carbon pricing system. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint-Laurent. Well, it's always nice to hear the former founder of Équiterre, who is currently being brought to court by Équiterre, tell us about the situation. Now, the reality is that countries like Germany, Great Britain, Australia, South Korea, the US have all taken measures to reduce taxes, especially on gas. Why? Because fuel prices affect everyone, especially when you're trying to buy groceries, because those groceries were transported and used fuel. And so those taxes are being passed on in food prices. Why is this government refusing to lower taxes? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Tourism. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And honestly, I find it shameful that a colleague from Quebec is saying we need to lower taxes on oil companies, when we know that we are facing a climate crisis in Canada and throughout the world. We will end up paying a lot more if we don't address the climate crisis today. And Madam Speaker, that's what we're doing on this side of the House. The Honourable Member for Saint-Jean. Madam Speaker, the Quebec Minister of the French Language, Simon Jolin Barrette, was invited by the Académie Française to go to Paris to explain to those who have been defending the French language for 4 centuries how Quebec is planning to protect its national language. Madam Speaker, the Minister of Official Languages also tabled the bill that is supposed to protect French's future. Did the Académie Française invite her? The Honourable Minister of Official Languages. Madam Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague. We recognize that French is declining in North America and in Canada, and that is why we have moved forward with a bill with a lot more teeth in order to address the situation. I would like to remind us that opposition colleagues, especially members from the Bloc Québécois, should work with us to do everything we can to protect our beautiful language. Thank you. The Honourable Member. I'll take that as a no, Madam Speaker. And that's probably because Bill C-13 does not protect French in Quebec. It protects institutional bilingualism, which is anglicizing workplaces and reducing the perception of the importance of mastering French in Quebec. C-13 does not recognize that French is the only official language that needs to be protected given the predominance of English in North America. The Académie Française didn't invite the minister. Is that because C-13 doesn't have the necessary scope? The Honourable Minister of Official Languages. Madam Speaker, it's very clear that the member across the way did not read Bill C-13 because it's quite the opposite. And ultimately, I think the Bloc Québécois is misleading Canadians. We have brought forward a new bill to ensure that all federally regulated businesses will be subject to the Act, to ensure that workers can work in French, that customers can be served in French, and that people can live in French in their communities. Once again, I'd like to ask opposition members to work with us to pass this important bill. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Windsor West.
Madam Speaker, hardworking Canadians are getting crushed by the rising cost of living. People across this country can barely afford the gas to drive to work or to get groceries. Yesterday, this government had a chance to finally give them a helping hand. Instead, the Deputy Prime Minister was on Bay Street reassuring the richest 1% that the Liberals won't tax the record oil and gas profits or give Canadians the help they need right now. What will it take for this government to stop making re-announcements and finally stand up for working-class Canadians getting gouged at the pumps?
L'honorable secrétaire parlementaire pour le ministre associé des Finances.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And yesterday, the Minister of Finance did give a speech on Bay Street in order to explain to Canadians how we are having their backs in this time of unprecedented volatility on a global scale, Madam Speaker. In fact, she detailed a 5-point plan that is going to help Canadians deal with the inflationary crisis that we're seeing right around the world. We have an affordability plan that is putting money directly back into the pockets of Canadians. What the NDP is proposing is tax hikes on grocery stores, which could only lead to increased prices for groceries for Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Elmwood Transcona.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. In her speech at the Empire Club this week, the Deputy Prime Minister treated inflation like it was a public relations problem for the government, rather than the very real financial issue that it is for so many Canadians. As she was speaking, new mothers on employment insurance and others depending on EI were having their EI payments garnished to pay debt back to the government while they're trying to keep their home. It's the wrong approach. We didn't hear anything new in the speech yesterday. I'm hoping soon we're going to hear that the government will bring into force a low-income CERB repayment amnesty and a freeze on payments for middle-class Canadians who are struggling to keep their homes in this time of inflation. When are we going to hear that?
L'honorable secrétaire parlementaire pour le ministre associé des Finances.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente, and I'd like to thank the finance critic for the NDP for his question and for his work on the Finance Committee. I would point out, that, of course, that yesterday's plan that was announced by our Minister of Finance included many supports that Canadians will feel for the first time this year. Madam Speaker, for a couple in Ontario with an income of $45,000 and a child in daycare, our plan could mean an additional $7,350 this year above existing benefits. This is real money going back into the pockets of real Canadians.
Remember for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes.
Canadians are struggling and looking for relief, but instead they're getting skyrocketing costs, unaffordable groceries, and toonie a litre gas. Because the Liberals' reckless spending and double dipping with taxes on top of taxes, Canadians are barely making it to the end of the month. And just like George Costanza, these Liberals will keep dipping as they see fit. It's disgusting. When will the Liberals stop double dipping in Canadians' pockets and give us some relief?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives are making jokes about a very serious situation. Maybe the honourable member saw what happened this week with cryptocurrency. That's the type of economic policy that's coming from the Conservative Party these days, Madam Speaker. Do the Conservatives not agree that a 50% reduction in childcare this year is real savings for Canadian families? Do they not believe that $2,400 in the pockets of a family of 3 through the Canada Workers Benefit is real money in the pockets of Canadian Canadian workers. They should know that. They voted against all of these measures.
That's right.
Yeah, there's a lot of chatting going back and forth here, and I would just ask those members that they're not being recognized for questions or for replying, so I would ask them to hold on to their thoughts. The honourable member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes.
The parliamentary secretary talks about jokes. What's a joke was yesterday the minister stood in this house when I talked about rising costs and talked about history with things that happened 10 years ago when it was her government, when it was that minister's department who approved $93,000 in champagne and caviar for government officials. Well, Canadians can't afford to heat their homes or to feed their families. It's a failed approach that they've doubled down on time and time again. So really, if anyone's laughing, we can't hear them because the joke is on that side of the house. It might come as a surprise to them, but just like budgets, gas prices, grocery bills, they won't balance themselves. Will the Liberals cut taxes for Canadians?
The Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, we did cut taxes for Canadians, and the Conservatives voted against it. Thank goodness that there was other support in this House to ensure that Canadians would see a reduction in their taxes, Madam Speaker. And when it comes to supporting Canadians, we will continue to put in place the measures that put money directly back into the pockets of Canadians. I'm thinking of a one-time payment for all Canadians having trouble finding low-income housing. That's coming into effect this year, Madam Speaker. We also have a reduction in childcare costs of up to 50% this year. Real money back into the pockets of real Canadians.
The honourable member for Central Okanagan, Similkameen, Nicola.
ABS. That's right, Madam Speaker. ABS. When buying a vehicle, ABS stands for Automatic Braking System. When your vehicle senses an impending danger, it brakes immediately. But Canadians have no such braking system when it comes to our finances. In fact, we have the opposite. This finance minister has a different take on ABS. Always be spending, always be spending. Will she order an immediate pause to all discretionary spending to fight inflation, or does their blood pact with the NDP forbid any of that?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, the Conservatives are changing their tone by day. Yesterday, the member was accusing us of not spending more money in order to support Canadians, and today he's saying that we're spending too much. Well, which is it, Madam Speaker? What we have done is ensure that over the course of the last several months and years, our budgetary planning would ensure that we would be there for Canadians.
Order. I'm sure that the honourable members, the opposition party, would want to hear, and there's going back and forth on both sides. I'm sure that everyone would like to hear what the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary is saying, because I'm sure that they may have a follow-up question. So the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary can restart.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And as I was saying, they're changing their story by day. Yesterday, the honourable member was accusing our government of not adding new spending into the economy in order to support Canadians, and today he's saying we're spending too much. In fact, Moody's, S&P, all of the credit agencies have reconfirmed our AAA credit rating. The spending that the minister put forward yesterday was included in our fiscal framework. We are there for Canadians while ensuring we don't add fuel to the fire and continue the inflationary spiral. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member for Central Okanagan, Similkameen, Nicola.
That member's just plain wrong, and I see where she gets it from. The Minister of Finance has gotten inflation wrong at every turn. Right. She said deflation was the concern. Wrong. Then it was transitory. Wrong. Now she has a so-called affordability plan, which only includes, you guessed it, Madam Speaker, more spending. Stephen Gordon is an economist at Laval and has said now is not the time for increased spending, as it only pours fuel on the inflationary fire. Instead, she could reduce discretionary spending, stop the Morneau escalator on user fees, give Canadians a break at the pumps. Will she listen to Conservatives and start fighting inflation? Or does she, just like her Prime Minister, just love spending too much?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, all of the experts agree what we have presented is a very fiscally responsible budget. In April, S&P and Moody's have reconfirmed our AAA credit rating. Our debt to GDP ratio continues to consistently go down, Madam Speaker, and our economic forecast is absolutely incredible. Experts are predicting that this year and next year, Canada will have the highest and fastest growth among G7 countries. Madam Speaker, we will continue to create jobs and ensure strong economic growth.
Honourable Member Calgary, Rocky Ridge.
Well, Madam Speaker, when asked why the government won't temporarily remove GST from gasoline to help offset the high cost of fuel, the government claimed that there was no evidence that removing a tax at the point of sale would reduce prices. They even called the suggestion a subsidy for industry. Madam Speaker, is this government so economically illiterate that it actually thinks that removing a tax on consumers is an industry subsidy?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, that the way that the GST is administered in this country is that we impose it on the company, in this case the oil company, and that they pass it on to consumers. What I have been explaining is that there is no certainty that oil companies will pass that savings directly.
Oh.
I apologize.
I would just ask members to keep whatever they have to think about in their head until it's time for them to ask a question. And I don't think that comment was very respectful at all. So I appreciate the honourable member saying that he's sorry, but again, I would just remind members to maybe just hold off to their thoughts and comments until it's their turn to ask a question. The honourable member for the honourable parliamentary secretary.
Madam Speaker, I would just say that so far all of the Conservatives have been proposing when it comes to economic policy is either a tax cut for oil companies or an elimination of certain tariffs that we've imposed on Russia, Madam Speaker. This is not serious economic policy. What we have proposed is.
Again, you know, I think others are trying to weigh in on the response, and I would just ask them to wait. The honourable member for Charleswood, St. James, and Sydney-Boy-Headingley.
Gas prices, food prices, home prices. You know what they all have in common, Madam Speaker? They're all going up, way up. You know what else is going way up, Madam Speaker? Government revenues from the massive taxes they collect on those things. While the Liberal cabinet is flush with cash, kitchen cabinets are looking pretty bare. Will the Prime Minister finally wake up, have just a little compassion for those who are struggling, and give Canadians a tax break so that they can at least afford to put food on the table?
L'honorable secrétaire parlementaire.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I agree with the member opposite. Canadians are feeling it. They're feeling increased prices at the grocery store and at the pump, which is why, as prices are increasing, so are our benefits. Many, if not all of our important benefits supporting Canadians right now are indexed to inflation, which means that they will continue to increase as inflation increases. Also increasing this year, Madam Speaker, is our support for seniors with the old age security benefit. Also increasing, Madam Speaker, is the Canadian workers benefit, and I could go on and on. Thank you.
Honorable député de Joliette.
The honourable member for Joliette. Madam Speaker, yesterday we were looking forward to hearing the Minister of Finance detail her plan to help people and businesses to face inflation, but we were disappointed. There is no increase to GST for the most vulnerable, no monthly payments, nothing for industries affected by the price of fuel like trucking, agriculture, or taxis, no increase in OAS for people under 75, nothing about the labour shortage. The minister just repeated measures that were already announced in the budget. Why did she show up empty-handed when people are struggling? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I appreciate the question posed by my colleague. What was announced yesterday is very important. It's a plan that will support Canadians who are facing an increase in the cost of living. Whether with an increase in the Canada Workers' Benefit or an increase in old age security, as well as one-time payments for Canadians who are having trouble finding affordable housing. This is a real plan which is not pouring more oil on the fire and which is managing our economy properly here in Canada. The honourable member, no, it was re-announcements, Madam Speaker. No one in this government is listening to Quebecers. Ever since the Minister of Finance seems to have become Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs all at the same time, there's no one left to move forward files that affect businesses and people. The fact that the minister is wearing 3 hats and doesn't want to delegate to her colleagues means that this government just doesn't understand what's happening on the ground. Does anyone in this government realize that inflation is a real problem with real consequences, and that we need a response now, not in 6 months? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Madam Speaker, the Bloc Québécois is accusing us of making re-announcements. Is it proposing that we pour more oil on the fire and spend billions of dollars now at a time when inflation is the problem? We have already spent $300 billion during the pandemic in order to help Canadians. This is not the time to spend more. What we did yesterday was explain everything that we've put in place, for example, in the April budget, to help Canadians this year.
Stormont Dundas, South Glengarry.
The chaos at Passport Canada and Service Canada is past being temporary, and it's worse than ever. The lawn chair lineups are now starting at 4 a.m., 3 a.m., 1 a.m. in many cities. And our office is handling dozens of transfer requests alone each and every day of people going to leave the country in the next day or two, still haven't got their passport despite applying months ago. Each time you call, you're on hold for a minimum of 2 to 3 hours. The chaos never had to happen in the first place, and each time the Liberals offer a remedy, we get longer lines and longer phone call delays. Can the Liberals even admit what their actual service standard is now, or are they too afraid to tell Canadians?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Families, Children and Social Development.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, the member, for his question. Madam Speaker, since December, Service Canada and our passport agents have been preparing for what we have now. The surge is unprecedented, and we continue to work through the process. Just for an example, 600 new employees have been hired and are on the job. Another 600 employees are in the process of being put into place. Every counter across this country is open. We know there are long lines, and that's why Service Canada agents are going through those lines, checking their passport travel plans, making sure that seniors, those who have children, those who have work times, are being accommodated within 2 business days for immediate travel. Thank you.
L'Honorable Député de Beauce.
The Honourable Member for Beauce. Madam Speaker, let's talk about these additional employees. People are waiting 9 weeks for a passport. 9 weeks. So if someone asks for a passport today, they might get the document mid-August if they're lucky. Now the minister says she hired 600 people and 600 more soon. Madam Speaker, we are facing a labor shortage. Businesses in my region are having trouble finding even one person. And the minister is trying to tell us that she can find 1,200 people in the blink of an eye? When will the minister take immediate action to fix this unprecedented crisis? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, the member, for his question. Madam Speaker, as I've mentioned before, additional processing facilities have been opened, initial staff have been hired, but this is not unprecedented just here in Canada, it's around the world. Wait times in countries like Australia, the UK, and elsewhere are anywhere between 9 to 11 weeks for expedited passports. Here, we are meeting the challenge of Canadians both in the lines and in our application process to make sure that those who have immediate travel needs are being addressed so that they can get on their way. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honourable Member for Pitt Meadows, Maple Ridge.
Madam Speaker, my staff tell me that the passport backlog is an absolute horror show. People are crying and freaking out when they call us, distressed that they're about ready to lose thousands of dollars for money spent for upcoming trips. In committee, the minister responsible for Passport Canada said, "Have thou no fear. MPs have a direct hotline to passport services." Well, Madam Speaker, the hotline is cold. My assistant waited 5 hours on Wednesday to get through. Will the minister responsible acknowledge today the Liberals' absolute incompetence?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, after 2 years of travel restrictions, the surge is unprecedented. We know Canadians are frustrated. We know that caseworkers are frustrated, which is why we are doing everything we can. The minister continues to work with officials to look at every opportunity to improve processing times, whether it's by phone, in person, or every other application process that we can do. Madam Speaker, we continue to work with our colleagues across the way if there are immediate needs. Some of you have already reached out to me, and we continue to collaborate. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Kelowna Lake Country.
Madam Speaker, a senior from my riding says, quote, "We do not have a smartphone or the technical knowledge to figure it all out. It discriminates people like us." And they cite technology cost. They're talking about the Arrive Can't app. Businesses are waiting months instead of weeks for deliveries from the U.S. due to vaccine mandates affecting truckers. The Liberals reducing some travel and vaccine mandates do not help either of these situations. Why are the Liberals keeping the mandatory use of the ArriveCan app and keeping Canada closed?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Madam Speaker, I thank my colleague for the question, and ArriveCan has been a very important tool in helping to keep Canadians safe against the virus. We continue to work with our stakeholders. We continue to work with travelers to improve their experience on ArriveCan by making it more accessible. I'm pleased to report to members in this chamber that compliance is up well over 90%, which in the long run will make travel more efficient, and of course we'll continue to improve that app as we go forward. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Nunavut.
Food insecurity in Nunavut is a major issue. The cost of living crisis is making a bad situation even worse. In Budget 2022, the Liberals did not mention food insecurity in the North once. My constituents are being left behind by this government. Food is expired by the time they reach shelves in Nunavut. This is not how people in Canada should live. Why has this government not taken steps to make sure all people in the North can access fresh, affordable food?
The Honourable Minister of Northern Affairs, Minister responsible for Prairies, Economic Development Canada, and Minister responsible for the Canadian Northern Economic Development Agency.
Lots of titles, wow. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker, and I thank the member for the very important question. I absolutely agree with her. There's nothing more important than food security in Canada and around the world. All Canadians, regardless of where they live, deserve access to safe and affordable food. Through Budget 2021, we've added another $170 million to the Nutrition North program. We've added the Harvester Support Grant so Indigenous groups can have help harvesting traditional country food. There's more to do, but we are in the right direction.
Here, here. The Honourable Member for Vancouver East.
Rents will continue to rise, and things will only get worse for people already struggling to pay for groceries. Rent for a one-bedroom unit in Vancouver is over $2,300 a month. In Toronto, over $2,100. In Halifax, almost $1,700. The Liberals' response to struggling Canadians is an extra $7 on the GST check. The government is so out of touch with reality. Will the Liberals double the GST rebate and increase the Canada Child benefit by $500 so families can get an additional $500 to $1,000 back into their pockets?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to thank my colleague for the question, and we agree that the costs of rent are increasingly difficult, and that is why in the budget, there is the Canadian housing benefit. It's more than $4 billion. So this year, we will add money into it in order to help families to pay these very increasingly difficult rents to pay.
Kitchener-Conestoga.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, my riding of Kitchener-Conestoga across Canada, we've seen the effects of global inflation has had on everyday lives of Canadians. An inflation caused in part by the illegal war in Ukraine, China's COVID-0 policy. Can the Parliamentary Secretary, the Minister of Tourism, and Associate Minister of Finance tell this House what the government is doing to help Canadians to deal with this global phenomenon?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, just yesterday the Minister of Finance released our affordability plan in order to tackle exactly what my colleague is addressing, and that is the increased cost of living. What we've presented is our plan to increase the Canada Workers' Benefit, to increase old age security, to provide a one-time payment to Canadians finding it difficult to access affordable housing, and of course our programs are indexed to inflation so that they continue to rise. This is a concrete plan, Madam Speaker, and I'd like to thank the Member of Parliament for Kitchener-Conestoga, who's an excellent musician, and I'd like to tell him, rock on, my friend.
The Honourable Member for Regina Louvain.
Madam Speaker, we've already seen the steepest 52-week rise in the price of meat since Pierre Elliott Trudeau. And we have producers across the prairies reeling because of dry conditions. With this government's insistence on pushing through front-of-package labeling on beef and pork, they are further hamstringing producers and consumers without solid evidence and this expensive change is necessary. With Canada set to become the only country on earth to impose this policy, is the government using the same top secret scientists they used to defend their unnecessary COVID mandates to now defend kneecapping our egg producers?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Health and the Minister of Sports.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. On this side of the House, we are alarmed and concerned about the rising rates of illnesses, particularly chronic illnesses that are impacted by poor diets. And these labels are widely recognized by health organizations in the scientific community as an effective tool to help counteract rising rates of diet-related chronic disease that continue to rise in Canada. Madam Speaker, more information for consumers is always a good thing. And during our engagements with industry stakeholders, Health Canada experts, and Canadians across the country, Health Canada analyzed the feedback and received and has made adjustments to the proposal where supported by science. Madam Speaker, on this side of the House, we will always be there for Canadians when they're making good decisions at the grocery store.
The honourable member for Desnette, Mississippi, Churchill River.
Madam Speaker, residents in northern Saskatchewan travel great distances to attend medical appointments in Saskatoon. From Meadow Lake, it is 3 hours. From Pierceland or Goodsoil, it's over 4 hours. From La Loche or Creighton, over 6 hours. Depending on road conditions, from Stony Rapids, it can be 14 hours. And Madam Speaker, these are one way. Can the minister tell us if the rising price of gas is threatening her constituents' ability to receive the medical care that they need, like it is my constituents?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Health and the Minister of Sport.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I want to thank the honourable colleague for his commitment to his constituents and his consistent advocacy, particularly for lower-income families in his riding. Madam Speaker, the Health Committee just concluded a study on the health care human resources crisis in this country. We're going to make sure that every Canadian has access to a family doctor, whether that's through telehealth in remote ridings like in my friend's riding. But Madam Speaker, the rising cost of living is reverberating across this country, and we'll be there for Canadians to support their health.
The honourable member for South Surrey White Rock.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. After stridently defending it, this government has suspended the vaccine requirement to travel domestically or outbound internationally. Provinces have acted, lifting COVID-related mandates, citing high vaccination rates, reduced hospitalizations, and lower COVID case counts. Even Liberal caucus members want all federal pandemic restrictions lifted. The Prime Minister's office is acting alone, using these mandates as a political weapon of choice. When will this Prime Minister put an end to divisive mandates that don't follow the science?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. On this side of the House, we agree that Canadians want to get back to normal, and we all want to get back to normal, but we have to be honest. The COVID pandemic is not over yet. And at every step, we've adapted our COVID-19 measures based on the current situation. And this week, we were able to announce that we are lifting the travel mandates, pausing them, because this pandemic is not over, Madam Speaker, and because of our strong vaccination rates, we are able to relax some of those requirements. But Canadians continue to die from COVID-19, and we can't take our foot off of the brake just yet. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member Hastings, Lennox and Addington.
During the last election, the Liberal platform promised to develop a safe, long-term care act to ensure that our seniors are guaranteed the care that they deserve, no matter where they live. Over 9 months later, nothing has happened. Madam Speaker, seniors are tired of waiting. It's been long enough. When will this government show some respect and stop treating seniors as second-class citizens and commit to tabling a long-term care act?
Good. The Honourable Minister of Seniors.
Madam Speaker, this pandemic continues to highlight the challenges in long-term care, including gaps in infection prevention and staffing. I personally, Madam Speaker, have seen these challenges on the front lines as a nurse. Madam Speaker, our government has made significant investments, including $4 billion through provinces and territories to improve the standard of care in those facilities. And Madam Speaker, I'd like to remind the member opposite that actually her party voted against the measure when we put it in the fall economic statement. $41.9 billion in cash support for provinces and territories through the Canada and Health Transfer, Madam Speaker. We will keep working with provinces and territories so that we can continue to fight this pandemic and ensure seniors in long-term care have the supports that they need.
The Honourable Member for Beauport, Côte-de-Beaupré, Île-de-Lorient, Charlevoix. Madam Speaker, the federal government banned the herring and mackerel fisheries just 2 days before the beginning of the season without any notice and no predictability or obviously no compensation plan. With just 48 hours, Ottawa pulled the rug out from under the feet of Quebec fishermen who have found themselves without income after having invested in their boats and equipment for the beginning of the season. The bare minimum is to compensate them. That's what pelagic fishermen are asking for. And this is what the Quebec National Assembly requested unanimously on April 7th. Will the minister respect this request, unanimous request from Quebec, and compensate our pelagic fishermen?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Fisheries, Oceans and Canadian Coast Guard.
Question.
The Minister.
Sorry, the Honourable Minister, sorry.
Thank you through the chair for that question. My goal is to grow the fish and seafood sector because of its importance to Canadian fish harvesters and processors and exporters. This is an amazingly strong part of our economy on both coasts. And to do that, we need sustainable fisheries. When fisheries are frail, then we need to take action, and that's just what we've done. There are many programs to support our fish harvesters.
The Honourable Member for Beauport, Côte de Beaupré, Île d'Orléans, Charlevoix. Madam Speaker, we have to manage fish stocks and people. There are 3 days left in this Parliament. Our fishermen must be compensated, and they need to be compensated now, not in 6 months' time. Even the Minister of Revenue and the member for Gaspé-les-Îles said that the suspension of the fisheries without compensation was unacceptable and showed a lack of understanding regarding this industry. Madam Speaker, it's true that the resource is declining. The minister was warned and has been warned for the past 10 years, but it's unacceptable to prevent people from practicing their profession with just 48 hours notice and no compensation. Will the minister commit immediately to compensating? The Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, I understand the difficulties for fish harvesters when stocks in some years are abundant and there is a lot of opportunity to fish them, and in other years and other stocks the abundance is just not there and we need to close down the fisheries. It is a difficult it's a difficult situation, and I want to acknowledge that our government has many ways in which we support Canadians in need when their employment is not available.
The Honourable for Lanark, Frontenac, Kingston.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question's for the Public Safety Minister. Just before the pandemic, I met with his predecessor on the subject of placing defibrillators into every RCMP cruiser. He agreed with me that this would save 300 lives per year, and he expressed personal pride at the fact that earlier in his career, he had placed defibrillators in every City of Toronto police cruiser. Could the current minister advise the House as to whether RCMP cruisers have been receiving defibrillators since the time of this conversation?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I want to thank my colleague for the question. Of course, over the past number of years, we've invested hundreds of millions of dollars to provide the RCMP with the tools and the equipment they need, not only to keep Canadians safe, but obviously to ensure that our frontline officers are safe, and we'll continue to make those investments. And of course, going forward, we certainly hope that Conservatives will support the investments which are in Budget 2022 to achieve many of those goals, and I look forward to continuing to speak with my colleague on the specific issue he raised. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Peterborough-Kawartha.
Madam Speaker, last week I spent an hour on the streets with a young woman who was passed out, and she was in danger of getting hit by any car. I couldn't call paramedics because she wasn't in medical distress, and they couldn't take her to the hospital because they don't have room for her. And I couldn't call the police because there's nowhere to take her. Now, I understand that decriminalization is very important to destigmatization, and that is critical in treating addiction. But why are we not investing in real solutions and investing in a mental health system to treat people and help them on their way to recovery?
Yeah. The Honourable Minister.
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Merci beaucoup, Madame.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I want to thank my colleague for her important question. You know, every day people die. And putting an end to this crisis requires a multidimensional plan. and diverting people from the criminal justice system. There is a plan and a wide range of resources for people taking drugs. This also includes ensuring a safe supply. We will oversee and watch the implementation in British Columbia because it's essential for us to gather information on how this plan will work.
Vaughn. Many of my residents in my riding are struggling to make ends meet. Helping special needs children and giving the required assistance has had an emotional and financial impact. Care centres are having to severely cut hours. This government has failed our most vulnerable citizens who are urgently attempting to stay afloat. When will this government stop punishing Canadians and start demonstrating compassion and doing its job by assisting our most vulnerable family in meeting their basic needs?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Health. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Since 2015, we have taken historic steps towards building a barrier-free Canada. In addition to the $112 million from Budget 2021, with Budget 2022, we are investing nearly $300 million in disability inclusion, including an employment strategy for persons with disabilities and funding to support the creation of materials for persons with print disabilities. Moving forward, we are committed to implementing the Disability Inclusion Action Plan, which will establish a robust employment strategy, enhance eligibility for government disability programs and benefits, introducing the Canada Disability Benefit Act to address poverty among Canadians with disabilities. We all benefit when everyone participates equally in society. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Châteauguay-Lacour. Thank you, Madam Speaker. 1 in 3 Canadians say that their mental health has gotten worse because of the pandemic. While many Canadians are struggling with mental health issues, some groups have been disproportionately affected in Canada. Can the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Mental Health and Addictions please inform this House of the announcement she made with the Red Cross concerning the work of community organizations across the country? The Honourable Minister.
Pas encore, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you. I thank my colleague for that important question, which allows me to reaffirm that good mental health will always be a priority for our government. The funding will not only improve the resilience of communities across Canada, but also help those whose mental health has been most affected by the pandemic. Yesterday, I was pleased to announce that our government will provide $10 million in funding to the Canadian Red Cross in order to support mental health programs as we work to build a resilient recovery. The funding announced is part of the $100 million investment set out in the 2021 budget to support people the most affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
West. Madam Speaker, the Liberals continue to fail Canadians on transparency. Official complaints on the access to information requests are up 71%. The Treasury Board has delayed their ATIP review for years, and the government continues to keep most of their ATIP staff at home, yet somehow managed to pay over $36 million to private consultants to process information requests, including over $300,000 for one single request. Has this government given up on open by default and replaced it with incompetent by default?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The member know that we are the first government to update the Access to Information Act in 34 years. We gave the Information Commissioner order-making power. We've waived all fees beyond the $5 fee. We have put into law a system for proactive disclosure of so much information that can be more easily released to Canadians. Madam Speaker, we're very proud of what we've done with the Access to Information Act.
The Honourable Member for Calgary West.
Department documents reveal that Pakistan's Chief of the Army Staff, General Qamar Javed Bajwa, had a visit to Canada approved for a $50,000 taxpayer-covered trip in 2020 that was cancelled thanks to COVID-19. General Bajwa has been accused of toppling 2 governments in Pakistan. The military under his command has been involved in human rights abuses, extrajudicial killings, and has links to terror groups. An assistant deputy minister called this visit, quote, appropriate. Does the Defence Minister share the same opinion that a $50,000 trip to Canada was appropriate for General Bajwa?
Wow. The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would concur with the member opposite. This situation is not appropriate. I am unaware of this current situation. I'd be happy to speak with the member opposite when I get further details. Thank you.
The honourable member for Coast Bay Central Notre Dame.
Madam Speaker, Gene from White Bay and many like him from all over Newfoundland and Labrador are trying to plan their summer. Getting out on the water to catch codfish is knit into the very fabric of life in Newfoundland and Labrador, and an important driver of the local economy. The dates and regulation for the food fishery should be released in March or April. But here we are, close to Canada Day, without knowing this fishery will even open at all. Given this is come home year, and the government is already 2 months behind on this announcement, will the minister show some respect and release the dates and regulations for the food fishery immediately?
The Honourable Minister of Fisheries, Oceans and Canadian Coast Guard.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. And I appreciate the work of fish harvesters and fish processors from coast to coast in this country. We make all our decisions on fish allocations based on science and in consultation with the harvesters and others. We are preparing decisions on this fishery, and they will be released soon.
The Honourable Member for Sudbury.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Critical minerals are essential building blocks of the green digital economy of tomorrow. Earlier this week, the Minister of Natural Resources went to the PDAC, the world's largest mining conference, to position Canada as a global leader in sustainable mineral development and green mining innovation. Could the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Natural Resources please update the House on the work regarding Canada's critical minerals strategy?
The L'Honorable Secrétaire Parlementaire.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
I want to thank the member for all of her hard work working with mines. We know there's no energy transition without critical minerals, and they represent an important economic opportunity for our country. That's why our government is working on a critical minerals strategy, and this week we released our discussion paper to inform the development of that strategy. Canadians will be able to have their say in the development of Canada's critical minerals strategy and how it can achieve its objectives. Our goal is to develop an end-to-end value chain from exploration, mining, refining, processing to manufacturing and recycling. I appreciate all of the hard work from the member.
Hear, hear. Okay. The honourable member for Port Moody, Coquitlam.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Canada has an equity problem. The Canadian Climate Institute reports the Liberals are failing again to deliver needed infrastructure in the north. Decades of underfunding means people don't have the tools to face wildfires, floods, and other extreme weather. Most Indigenous and northern communities already lack access to safe drinking water, adequate housing, and reliable roads. That is not fair. When will the Liberals finally make meaningful investments in infrastructure and stop neglecting the people in the north?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the member for that important question. Our government has been very clear. Climate change is real, and the north is seeing the effects of climate change at the rate of 3 times the rest of Canada. We are working with Northerners, with industry, with Indigenous partners, with territorial and provincial partners to support the development of knowledge and tools to adapt to the impacts of climate change and to reduce reliance on diesel in the north by shifting to renewable sources of energy. Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of question period this Friday. If you're exiting, I would just ask you to exit quietly. We have a point of order. The Honourable Member for Calgary-Shepherd.
Madam Speaker, just out of question period, the Parliamentary Secretary, I take his explanation that I should provide him with the ATIP and to the House. So I'm seeking unanimous consent of the House to table the access to information requests with the information regarding General Bajwa and the trip to Canada of $50,000 that was to be approved.
Opposed to the honourable member moving the motion will please say nay. Nay. The House has heard the terms of the motion. All those opposed of the motion will please say nay. Nay. No. Tabling of documents. Je fais-tu orders of the day? Je fais juste tabling of documents. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary of the Government House Leader.
Madam Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 36.8a, I have the honour to table in both official languages the government's responses to 6 petitions. These returns will be tabled in an electronic format.
Dépôt de projet de loi émanant des députés.
Introduction of government bills. Mr. Lametti.
Kira moves for leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Criminal Code, Self-Induced Extreme Intoxication. Sorry. Cette motion est réputée adoptée.
This motion is deemed adopted.
C'est-tu ça? Je vais-tu à ça? Est-ce que je le redis? Shall the bill be read a second time?